All right, we're going to get rolling.
They helped create an economy that was completely addicted to cheap money.
You need to buy savings bonds or something. You need to be way, way, way out of this space.
I subscribe to Miss Piggy's rule of money management. Always manage to have more money, you know what I mean?
It wasn't but 2 years ago that everybody was saying China's economy was going to be bigger than that of the United States. It's gone in the exact opposite direction.
So we're going to jump right in.
Welcome to This Week in Mining, where we talk about making money in the mining and the metals sector and everything in between. My guest today is Gerald Celente. Gerald, it's great to have you back on the show. I appreciate you doing this.
Oh, great being on. Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's start with a sort of big overarching question, and then I'm going to pull on some threads. When you look at macro today, you know, high level, Gerald, what's catching your attention? Where are you getting drawn in and becoming very passionate or curious? Well,
it's the wars. I mean, that's the big issue. The Ukraine war and the Israel wars. And they just keep ramping up. And now, as we go on the air, what is the latest that they killed, about 290 something people got killed in Lebanon. And, you know, the wars just keep ramping up. And then the Ukraine war. I mean, it's a freak show. You got this little clown that used to play the piano with his penis. I'm not making that up. You could Google it up. Zelensky, who's the president of Ukraine. He was a sitcom guy. It's a comedian that's now the president. And now he comes to Pennsylvania and they're bragging about, you know, we make the weapons in Scranton, Pennsylvania. It's so great to have you here. I mean, yeah, people have no idea about how this war started and why. I mean, we only wrote about it in detail in the Trends Journal as it was happening. Yeah, look how happy this guy is. This is back in 2014 when the United States overthrew the democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych in Ukraine. People have no idea about this. Oh, how proud we are that you're here. Who's this little clown, Shapiro, the senator, governor? Who the hell are you guys talking to? Again, the war is the big issue. We are on the verge of nuclear annihilation. Putin's even warning it. Again, we put the facts in the Trends Journal. We repeat, here, take the Israel war. We pay to go to Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper. And then, of course, we go to the Jerusalem Post. We go to Times of Israel. Oh, then we go to IRNA, ISNA, Tehran Times. Oh, we want to hear what they have to say. Oh, we go to Middle East Eye. We go to Al Jazeera. We go to Middle East Monitor. We want to hear what Arab News. We want to hear what they have to say. But no. You only are allowed to believe what we tell you. If you don't believe what I tell you, I'm your lousy little piece of crap politician. If you don't believe the crap spewing out of my mouth, you believe in misinformation. The people don't have a clue what's going on. I've been at this since 1980. You're asking me what I'm concerned about? The genocide going on, bombing the hell out of Gaza, now escalating the war. This is insanity. And so, that's my major concern. Yeah, Russia will be forced to use tactical nuclear weapons against NATO, said former Putin advisor in a new interview. All right.
Yeah, it seems like both countries are redrawing the lines that determine when and how nukes should be used, both Russia and in America, right? A sort of second shot mandate has been removed. Now, so digging into this myself, it seems like, you know, deep in the state, you could say both the Ukrainians and the Russians do want a ceasefire. And it's the Americans who are maybe choosing the timing of that. The dystopian outlook I've heard is that the current administration's not going to broker a ceasefire too soon because they worry that Americans will forget about it by the time they get to the polls. And they need to make sure that this is the front and center headline when Americans show up to the polls. Do you think there's validity to an outlook like that, Gerald? What's your take?
No. Again, you go back and we only put the facts in. From the very beginning, the United States, Russia wanted they wanted a deal. They met with Turkey when the war began in February 24th, 2022. A month later, they're trying to negotiate a peace deal. The United States said they were totally against it. And they had that little clown, the best cartoonist in the world, could not come out with a more clownish figure than the little jerk over there in the UK, Boris Johnson. Remember Boris Johnson going to Kyiv as the mouthpiece for America not to do a ceasefire. And now they're saying that guy Stoltenberg, the little jerk over there, the NATO head, no, we got to continue to send weapons so Ukraine could defeat Russia. And van der Leyen, they stole $30 billion worth of Russian assets that they had deposits and gave it to Ukraine to get more weapons. They don't want peace. These are maniacs. Like I said, this has been going on for centuries. What's your favorite war? You like the Peloponnesian War? No, I like the 100-Year War. The War of Roses was so lovely. And one war, what's your favorite crusade? Well, I like the Third Crusade better than the Eighth Crusade. Well, the First Crusade. This stuff's been going on forever. You got maniacs. These are evil, evil people.
So walk me through the motivation as you see it. You know, there could be a handful of reasons that Americans would be so enthusiastic to support this war that Ukraine can't really win, so to speak. But Lindsey Graham recently kind of came out and said the quiet part out loud when he talked about the value of resources under the ground in Ukraine and how important this is to the American economy. It's funny, it's a Ukrainian resource, but to frame it that way. What's your take on the core motivations when you say that people don't understand what's happening here? How do you see it, Gerald?
Well, again, what you said is correct too. You know, like I said, you think we would have invaded Iraq or Libya or Syria if their major export was broccoli?
Right.
This has been going on. There's that great book by Smedley Butler, most decorated Marine at the time in the history of America. War is a racket. And he goes and tells you how he's fighting for United Fruit, how he's fighting for, you know, this and that. Everywhere they sent him. It's about the bigs control the country. They get what they want. Again, you look at this little clown show, this little arrogant little piece of jerk over there in Pennsylvania, bragging about making weapons in Scranton and having Zelensky sign the bombs. Isn't that nice? Where are all the religions? Where's they got locked where the Quakers waiting for died in an earthquake? Where are all the religions out there demanding peace? Where are they? So, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, okay, so let's just go with that. Actually, you could say they're in the Middle East and it's not going so well. I mean, so to pivot that direction, if to bring religion into it, it's a perpetual conflict on the heels of opposing religions to a very large degree. What's your take on that, Gerald? I'm not sure what you mean.
Well, when you say where are the religions that are asking for peace, yeah. And I align with that. As a Christian myself, it doesn't matter. Actually, I'm a human being. That's why I want peace. That's the core reason. I don't know. Is there a history of religious backed peace brokering?
Well, again, if you believe if you call you got this guy, they call themselves Christians, but Christ would believe in war. Right. I mean, if you believe in your God, there's no God. How about thou shalt not kill? And we got to go any further than that. I mean, we got to negotiate for peace. Again, I launched a movement called Occupy Peace.
That's right.
I did it over a decade ago. And we're having a big rally here on September 28th. We've got Scott Ritter, Judge Napolitano, Max Blumenthal, Anya Parampil, Joe Laurie, and others. We're doing everything we can in the name of peace. Again, look, you heard of the Samson option, SAMSON. If Israel loses, they say they're going nuclear. They have between 200 to 400 nuclear warheads.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're looking at what's going on now with Ukraine. And we've been writing about this for over a year and a half, that they're going to attack a Russian nuclear power plant, which they did. And it's out of the news. They did it about a month ago. And then there's going to be a false flag event that drags the people into war. You know, there's an article here. Everybody should Google this up. History Today. Mainstream media. Here it is. All right? I didn't know about this until 2 years ago. United States freezes Japanese assets. On July 26, 1941, President Franklin Roosevelt seized all Japanese assets in the United States. You know why? In retaliation for Japanese occupation of French Indochina. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Wait a minute. French Indochina? What are the French doing in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos? We're stealing their tin, their rubber, rape, pillage, and French Indochina? What are you doing over there? Then Britain and the Dutch East Indies followed suit. Dutch East Indies? You mean the Dutch robbing, stealing, raping, pillaging over in Indonesia? The result, Japan lost access to 3/4 of its overseas trade and 88% of its imported oil. They only import 100%. They lost 3/4 of their trade, 3/4 of their overseas trade. Can't understand why they bombed Pearl Harbor about 6 months later.
Right. Right. Let me ask, Gerald, what are you what are you litigating there? I wonder if human nature's ever been different. And I agree that the atrocities committed by the Dutch East India Company under the Dutch Empire are atrocious. I mean, I think far more grotesque than we see today, because there wasn't near-term fast media coverage of anything, right? You could get away with anything.
Yep.
And so, you know, British Empire as well, American Empire is no different. Prior to that, the Portuguese, the Spanish, like it's always been that way. You know, even here, the continent that I live, right? We had the Navajo Empire and the Apache Empire, and they were completely wiped out by the Comanche Empire. It's this constant jockeying for territory and resources. And I just don't know if it's ever been any different.
No.
And although I don't like it, I look at today's outbreak of hostilities and I kind of think it's status quo. Like, I mean, is there another way for humans at this scale to interact and operate? What do you think?
Yeah, again, as I said, what's your favorite war? The Peloponnesian War? Like you said, this has been going on forever.
Right.
And I'm saying now it's a different story in the sense that it's nuclear annihilation. I suggest people listen to or read John F. Kennedy's speech to graduating students at American University in June of 1963. It's all about peace. And he goes on to say that we should not hate the people in the Soviet Union. They suffered more than anyone else in World War II. They lost their factories, their farms, their homes, their land from the equivalent of Chicago East. He said, if we go to war with them, a nuclear war, this is 1963, life on Earth will be destroyed in 24 hours. That was then.
Mm-hmm.
He ends the speech by saying, America will never go to war again. That's June. July, August, September, October, November, Jack, you're dead.
Yeah.
8 months later, they get us into the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. I have a photograph here, I'll show you later, of me and John Connally and his wife Nellie. John Connally was the governor of Texas, the Democratic governor, sitting in front of Kennedy, took the bullet in the back. I have a photograph of me, him, and his wife in front of the book depository. Actually, it's the side. The side is where they shot him from. It was his first time back since the assassination. This is 1992. As we're going back into the Anatole Hotel, he said to me, I read your book, and it was this book, one of my books called Trend Tracking, far better than Megatrends Time magazine. He said, I know your heart's in the right place. He said, but you don't have a clue what's going on, and neither do the American people. Because if they did, there'd be a revolution in this country. This is 1992. He's also the John Connolly that became a Republican and was the Treasury Secretary under Nixon that took us off the gold standard. People call it a government. I call it a crime syndicate.
Well, from an operational standpoint, I mean, what's the difference, right? Yep. It's gathering of power. So, okay, so I want to pivot a little bit and get your thoughts on some geopolitical events right now. I know you cover the Chinese economy in great detail. It's a hot point of debate on my channel, the true strength of the Chinese economy. How real is the competition threat from the Chinese in terms of global power balance against the United States? What's your take, Gerald? Is the Chinese economy a paper tiger like the Soviet Union was back in the 80s, or far from it? You know, what's your take?
You know, one of the things is that, you know, sometimes people call me a futurist, and I said, there's no such thing. You can't predict the future. There are too many wild cards, whether they're made by humans or nature. So here was the thing. We were writing up until 2020 that the 20th century was the American century and the 21st century would be the Chinese century.
Right.
Because the business of America has been war and the business of China is business. Then China launches the COVID war in January 2020 during their Chinese Lunar New Year, the year of the rat. And they locked down the place for 3 years of zero COVID policy. Again, tracking trends is the understanding of where we are, how we got here to see where we're going. Let's go back when little Billy Clinton let China come into the World Trade Organization. They officially came in 2 weeks after 9/11. You look at China's GDP from 1970 to 2001. It goes up and all of a sudden shoots up. With every boom, there's a bust. They overbuilt it. Some 30% of China's GDP is in the real estate market. Again, with all booms, there's always a bust. They made a bad situation terrible with their 3 years of zero COVID policy. They destroyed the lives and livelihoods of hundreds of millions. So now you're seeing more tariffs, more restrictions putting on China. The trade wars are heating up again. What will happen? We've been writing that China is going to be moving more towards self-sustaining and self-sufficient economy. It's not going to be buying luxury items made from Europe anymore. It's going to be made in China. They have 1.4 billion people. America has what? 332 million? We got about 400 or 500 million in Europe. They become self-sustaining, made in China. You have 1.4 billion people doing business with each other. Everybody's doing really well. So that's what they're going to start doing. And they're going to keep, of course, their Belt and Road Initiative. They're going to keep expanding in emerging countries.
Because that's the one, yeah, I mean, that's the one, if there was a pushback to that, which is kind of a return to like 18th century Chinese empire, they were very isolationist and very wealthy, right? And China was known as the place where silver goes to die because they wanted your silver and they wanted nothing else from you as an economy. They had it all. That was their belief. Obviously, that blew up in the Opium Wars, but I lost my train of thought there. You said something at the end there that got me very curious. Right. So the global South, Belt and Road initiatives. And in my thoughts there is like, this is their solution to the demographic challenges, because if there is an Achilles heel, it's that they're getting old before they're getting rich in China. Yep. And that's a problem. You got to take care of those people. So if they can't repopulate, what they can do is, unofficially colonize the most favorable demographics in the world, which are typically in the global South. They're still having kids. populations are young. Is that how you see that? Is that one of the core motivations behind the Belt and Road initiatives, or what's your take, Gerald?
You know, people talk about the population decline. They got 1.4 billion people. Go back 100 years ago. Would they have about 500,000?
Sure.
You know, they got a lot of people there. But again, they overbuilt the place. And that's going to be an issue for many, many years. But again, they're going to be more and more self-sustaining, and they're going to keep opening up new marketplaces and doing business. The world has had enough of the United States socioeconomic and geopolitical hegemony. They've had it. They're fed up with America. You see what's going on with the BRICS, and more talk about, you know, a BRIC currency backed by gold. And by the way, one of our top trends for 2024, it's right there on January 2nd, golden year for gold. Gold is up almost $600 an ounce since we made that forecast. This is the beginning of the death of the dollar. This isn't rocket science. You got what? When you look at the real debt, it's not 35 trillion. It's more like 265 trillion in the United States. It's costing $2 trillion a year just to service the debt. The lower further interest rates go down, the deeper the dollar falls. The deeper the dollar falls, the higher gold prices go up. And now we have to look at the geopolitical situation, which we won't talk about because they won't talk about it. I'm being facetious. Gold is the #1 safe haven asset. #1. And what no one in the major media is talking about in the business section is the office building bust that's going to bring down the banks. As we're speaking, the office occupancy rate in the United States, according to Castle Systems with a K, is 51.8%.
Wow.
Your office vacancy rate ain't nobody there. Zip. 24% vacant. Vacant. You could Google it up. About a month ago, Midtown Manhattan, a building that sold for $320 million in 2006, went up for auction, sold for $8.5 million.
I think I saw that.
Yep.
That's bonkers.
The buildings that have been built in the last 50 years, again, we only go by data, are non-convertible to housing. So that's the BS that they throw out there. You're going to see massive defaults on loans that's going to bring down the banking system. No one's talking about this. Oh, how about over there in the UK, that Canary Wharf? What did it sink? Oh, HSBC moved out one after another. Can't rent out the spaces. This is global. The COVID war changed life on Earth. People forget all about what happened. People forced to work at home. Here, again, not my data. Other tech companies, again, as reported, only 3% are demanding that the people come back to work 5 days a week.
Right. So that, I mean, that's a good indicator that the commercial real estate crisis does not have a solution other than default and reset, right? Massive insolvencies and receivership situations, probably left, right, and center. I gotta wonder, when you look at the bubbles that have formed in our economy simultaneously, whether it's like private credit, consumer, corporate debt, sort of reaching all-time highs, the equity market, U.S. equity market cap is now like 200% of GDP. So you could say the equity valuations are a little crazy right now. And then residential real estate as well. I think home valuations at their highest in terms of prices to income they've ever been. And so there's going to be cross-contamination here, right? And when one thing goes, it creates a cash call on something else because you got to cover your losses. Is that how you see it, or am I being a bit too dystopian here with my outlook?
Not at all. I agree with you 100%. Again, nobody's talking about the banking crisis ahead. And again, the banks got all this dough, the reserves. What did they do when they got the money, when they dumped in trillions of dollars and told people you don't have to go to work, here's free money? Right. They bought treasuries when interest rates were at 0.
Yeah.
They don't have the dough to cover these losses. There's going to be bank failures like we've never seen. Here, we're in 2024. Let's only go back to 2023. 3 banks went bust. The Silicon Conman Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and First Republic. The markets were crashing and gold prices are spiking. That was 3.
Yeah.
You have some $4 trillion of commercial real estate loans coming due in the next 2 years and 4 months.
Wow. 2 years and 4 months, $4 trillion in commercial real estate loans coming due.
They're going to default on these loans. The buildings are empty. You know, I'm up here in Kingston, New York. We're 90 miles north of New York City. This was the first capital, by the way, of New York. The British burnt it down, the Battle of Saratoga. More pre-Revolutionary War stone buildings here than anywhere else. And it was the third Dutch settlement. People are flooding out of the city. They're flooding out of the city. I've been up here where I'm in this location now since 2007. I know this area. Never before did I see young people with little kids in strollers. They're flooding out of the city. The city's turning to crap. It's just dirt all over. Again, I'm a city guy. I'm a Bronx. You know, I know the city. Never before on a Sunday afternoon down in the West Village seeing people actually shooting up. You know, filth all over the streets. Over every scaffolding, there are homeless people. The damage that this COVID war has done is incalculable. The mentality's changed. Oh, by the way, 9 o'clock at night, dead. I'm in the Hudson Valley. I call it Death Valley. The city, when I was a young guy, we used to go out at 1 o'clock in the morning. Now it's dead again at 1 o'clock in the morning. It's a whole different world. The businesses are starting to go out of business now too, by the way, because now that free money that they dumped in, it's drying up. And again, we only look at the data. What do you got? 3 companies, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street own 88% of the S&P 500.
What?
88%. 1% own 54% of the equity markets. And when you put the 10% in, it's over 90%. You were talking about housing. You're looking now at first-time home buyers are hitting near a record low in the last, half a century or more. They can't afford to buy a home. The home prices since the COVID war have gone up almost 50%. Who the hell can afford a house? A nothing home. Median price was about $426,000. When your median household income is what? About $74,000?
Quick break here, guys. Today's episode is brought to you by Copernico Metals. Now, regular viewers of my channel will be familiar with the entrepreneur behind Copernico. His name is Ivan Bebek. Now, although a young man in this business, Ivan's already created tremendous value for his shareholders in the past, namely with Caden Resources, which he sold to Agnico Eagle, and Keegan Resources, which became a mine now owned by Galiano Gold. Now, Ivan has surrounded himself with expertise from BHP, Newmont, and Barrick on his board at Copernico Metals. Check out copernicometals.com. Now back to the interview. So here's a question for you. So we covered how destructive the last few years has been on the middle and lower classes of America. It's very visible. Any major city you go to, you'll see the scenes that you just described in the Bronx and in the West Village, et cetera, New York. Simultaneously, there's been a massive concentration of wealth in the upper reaches, and you just mentioned that as well. I didn't know it was that much. 88% of the S&P owned by BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. That's wild, and I don't even know what to make of that. But as a consequence, and you look at the stimulus packages that have just been increasing and increasing and increasing with every administration. When Trump was in office, he set a record for 4 years of money expansion until Biden took office, and he smashed that record. And he beat the 8-year record in 4 years, right? And this is precedent now. This is how we're going to be governed effectively, with massive monetary expansion And there's no way I would assume that any administration, any politician is going to let BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street get whacked as they would in that kind of market crash scenario, or the holders of those commercial real estate loans that are coming due $4 trillion in 2 years and in a month. I got to assume what that really means is that we're going to see currency expansion. Hard to believe, but at a rate that we can't even imagine today. Do you think that's the most likely outcome for as long as they can? Yeah,
absolutely. Let's go back. Let's go back to the Great Recession. I took out the domain name, by the way, the Panic of '08 in 2007. The Federal Reserve, according to, again, we only put data in our facts. According to the Levy Institute at Bard College, the Federal Reserve dumped in $29 trillion to bail out the banksters from late 2007 to 2010. They will do anything they can to keep the Ponzi scheme going.
Right.
Let's stay in kindergarten and listen to our kindergarten teacher tell us about the plunge protection team. Isn't that a nice word for a bunch of scumbags rigging the markets? Don't you say that, Celente. We're the Federal Reserve. We own the country. Oh, you don't believe me? Who's the former Fed head? Miss Facha Brut, Janet Yellen? Oh, what's she playing the role now? Oh, the U.S. Treasury Secretary. You mean the Fed head's the Treasury Secretary? We own the government. All you people are nothing more than plantation workers of Slavelandia. We are the robber barons. We pay little pieces of scum. Bill Clinton, $300,000 an hour. The Goldman Sachs gang to hear him BS for free. Oh, you mean the Bill Clinton that did away with the Glass-Steagall Act? The Bill Clinton that gave us the Federal Communications Act, that did away with the communication laws that allowed 6 countries to own 92% of all the media? One slimy thing after another. The bigs own America. Look at what they call a campaign in a democracy. Look at all the money coming from the billionaires to their favorite candidate. You got no money, you can't run. Oh, this is the America that kills people all over the world in the name of freedom and democracy. When they rob it from us in front of our eyes, they own everything. There's going to be another off with their heads 2.0 at some point.
You know, it's a bit tough when you think about the American public votes for this currency debasement, right? Like it's clouded in social programs and government handouts and government programs and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, people vote for the currency expansion. That's what they're voting for when they're voting for a government who's going to give them more stuff. A government that's already running a $2-3 trillion deficit. Where do you think the money's coming from when you're voting for promises of an easier life? Like it's you're voting for inflation at a massive, massive scale.
Yeah, it's, again, you know, you can't make this stuff up. Pope Francis tells U.S. Catholics to choose a lesser of two evils in coming election.
Okay. Who does he determine as the lesser of two evils?
Well, here's what he said. Not voting is ugly. It's not good. You must vote. You must choose the lesser evil. Who is the lesser evil? That lady or that gentleman? I don't know. Whether it is one who is chasing away migrants or one who kills children, both are against life, but you must choose the lesser evil. Okay. Regardless of which one you wanted. Hey, how about the greater of two goods?
It'd be nice.
A lesser of an evil? That's like saying almost pregnant. There's no such thing as a lesser of evil. Evil is evil. Hey, Pope. What Christ are you talking about? Would Christ say, vote for a lesser of evil?
Okay.
And again, I was raised Catholic, so, you know, nobody can, don't tell me, oh, I don't like, it's all a bunch of baloney when somebody says something like this. You know, that's how low it's gone. That's why I'm mentioning it to you. They're asking us to vote for a lesser evil and saying you must do that. I'm not going to vote for a lesser of two evils.
So how do you abstain then, Gerald?
Yeah, I haven't voted for a presidential candidate since Ron Paul.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And so could I make the assumption that placing any vote is effectively encouraging the status quo to continue?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're both murderers and thieves. By their deeds you shall know them. Right.
So then what's your, oh man, there's so much I want to pull on here. So what's your strategy then? Is it emancipating yourself from the system and choosing sovereignty, you know, by your definition? And what's your, is that accurate? You know, if you're abstaining from voting or choosing the lesser of two evils, is this a personal strategy just to emancipate yourself from the system? And like, walk me through this a little bit.
I wasn't, you know, again, I'm a blessed guy. I'm a Napolitano born in the Bronx, born to be free. 1946, the spirit's at the height of America. And I'm feeling all of that from my aunts and uncles, my parents, grandparents, may their souls rest in peace. You were free. You were free to be yourself. I get in a fight with my father as a kid growing up. He say, little SOB. So what do you think I'm telling you? What I'm telling you because I want you to be like me? I want you to become yourself. A system, leadership? I don't need anybody to lead. Who the hell are you to lead me? I wasn't put on this earth to be led. And to tell you the way I feel about it, this is one of the T-shirts that we sell at Trends Journal. Could you see that?
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah.
And here's the back. These little pieces of scum. Oh, by the way, I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate. I worked on major political campaigns in Westchester County in the 1970s. I designed and instructed a course in American politics and campaign technology, how to run political campaigns, and I taught it at St. John's University. I have a picture of me when I picked up Ronald Reagan at the Chicago Hilton when I was 30 years old, 1976. 2 days before he was running against Gerald Ford, putting on a brunch for him and 16 of our board of directors. I was the Prince of Norway, did a gig with the guy Major when the Prime Minister of the UK. I know what the system looks like. When I quit my job at the Senate, nobody could believe it. I said, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to suck my way up to the top. That's all it is. It's the most low-life pieces of garbage you can imagine. The only ones worse than that are the bureaucrats. That's the other people that can't get a job in the real world that suck into the political system. Mm-hmm. And then they become the most arrogant. Sure. That's what's running the country. They've robbed us of what our founding fathers fought for. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Happiness, dirty word anymore. Not allowed to be happy. Get back in your house. Close down your business. Stand 6 feet apart. I'll tell you what to do. The wind blows exactly in straight lines. Every 6 feet. Doesn't go up, doesn't go down. And when you get on that airplane, you better put that mask on. But when you're eating and drinking, you take it off because COVID knows when you're eating and drinking. All right. When I was a kid, they had us hiding under a desk in case an atom bomb went off.
Right.
Like that was going to make a difference.
Yeah. Right.
And then I'm in high school, they had us standing against the wall like this. And then they'd say, if you see a flash, don't look at it. If I see a flash, I'll be dead in a second. Mm-hmm. These are the morons when you talk about leadership. They're arrogant little nobodies. And if you call them out man to man, as we'd say in the Bronx, they wouldn't know whether to piss or shit. Oh, don't talk to me like that. No, you don't tell me what to do. You don't you talk to me like that. All right. They're little gutless nothings. And the people have to stand up for their freedom. And that's why I launched Occupy Peace. And if you ask me, the only way this could change is with a renaissance.
Yeah, I have to ask. Okay, so people have to stand up for their freedom. I want to park that, and I want to pull on that thread because, you know, my family's American Canadian. My wife's American. I'm Canadian. We spent time north and south the border, and you know, I constantly run into the idea of a country that identifies their core value of freedom, being America, simultaneously leads the world in incarcerated citizens per capita. So, you know, can you really value freedom if you lead the world at locking people in cages? Like there's many examples of this hypocrisy, but most Americans, in my experience, don't want to talk about that. It's like, no. America is freedom. It's like, no matter how many examples we have, that's not the case. You know, we've drank the Kool-Aid, and it leads me to believe that to a degree, and it breaks my heart to say this, American freedom is like the best branding campaign ever distributed by the government to the American people. And we've drank the Kool-Aid, and we'll restate that fact to anybody who will listen. But in reality, it's not how we're living. And so how do you stand up for freedom, and what does that look like, Gerald?
Again, I have peace rallies every year. You know, I do as much as I can. The magazine, you know, we put the facts in there and try to help people see their way to the future. And we provide, you know, you say this is what's being reported. This is our analysis and this is our forecast. You know, so we're trying to help people do as much as they can. And as I said, you know, this is one of my books. There used to be this TV series, Everyone Loves Raymond. The woman, Doris Roberts, who played the mother, her last starring role was playing my aunt in this book, what Zidzi gave Honey Boy. Zidzi's the Neapolitan dialect for auntie. And it's about growing up, you know, in the Bronx and the Italian family. But you can't really see this, but this is a picture of my parents' wedding. Okay. May they rest in peace. 1934. My father worked in a fish store. They were laborers. Women worked in factories. The way they were dressed, the dignity. You go back to the 30s, the height of the Great Depression. Listen to the music of swing time. People sing about not having any money, but really feeling great. They built up the spirit of the people. And now it's one bad rap. Look what the people look like. You know, when I was a kid, they had this thing called the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. Mm-hmm. They went out of business. You know why? You don't have to step right up, see the fat man, see the tattooed lady, see the lady with the beard. They're out in the street. You could see them all over for free.
Oh, man.
It's true.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
So we need a renaissance. The Renaissance followed the Black Plague. The Black Plague was a result of it was no sanitation. The people were killing themselves like they're killing ourselves now with, like, whether it's 5Gs or PSB, whatever the microplastics. They did the same thing back then. They were destroying themselves. 60% of Europe was wiped out with the Black Plague. The Renaissance. Alla Romana e all'antica, in the manner of the Romans and the ancients, to describe the quality of the work that they were creating in a Renaissance. And that's what we need. We need a Renaissance. We have to bring back the true quality. Of course, there's always the negatives of what happened in this country, terrible things, but there was also the spirit of freedom when everybody in the world wanted to come to America. I cannot tell you how many people I know from foreign countries that no longer want to be here.
Well, and when you mention, you know, of course, terrible things happened in American history, you know, I just feel like that needs to be said. That's not an American phenomenon. Unfortunate. It's a human nature thing. Yeah. Back to like our cycle of empires, like the Navajo had a massive slave trade. Then the Comanches took it over. Like, this isn't an American thing. It's a global thing. It's a human thing, right? To create these atrocities and oppress our neighbors if given the opportunity. Sometimes greed takes over. Regularly, greed takes over. Yep. But we live in this sort of apologist mindset where we're always sorry for the sins of our ancestors, when it's like, you can't just cherry pick a certain slice of the timeline and say, this is the history we're going to focus on. Like, you know, you got to let's look at all of human history. Let's look at the cycles of oppression and et cetera, et cetera. So we need a renaissance. Yep. Now, I mean, it could go a number of directions. What does that look like? How could Americans rise up in some kind of a Renaissance environment? Draw the picture for me.
People have to get in the best shape they can physically, emotionally, and spiritually. You have to rise yourself to the best. And again, I want to make it clear, I may pull a lot of crap in my life. You know, I mean, it'll be perfect. You know, what are you kidding? But you have to grow up and you learn by what you're doing and you don't stop learning. I've never worked harder in my life, by the way. And the magazine's what, about 180 pages a week?
It's huge. It's amazing, by the way, just as an aside, the fact that you put that out every week is a colossal undertaking. It's very impressive.
So I study all the time. I don't stop. I keep learning. People have to get in the best shape they can, again, physically, emotionally, spiritually. This was the first book I worked on. I didn't write it, but I helped write it. Back in the 1980s when nobody was talking about this. Natural Healing. It was a Warner book. When COVID came out, I go to my buddies, doctors I know that do integrative medicine and natural healing. They could put me on a whole line of different vitamins and supplements. In 5 years, going almost 5 years, I got one cold. I try to get in the best shape I can. The older you get, the better shape you have to get in, because I don't want to become an inmate in a nursing home. I took my sister out of one. She passed on, but I took her out every time I went to see her. She drugged up. She had 2 strokes and dementia. Had somebody taking care of her. When I had her up here, she was painting. She was so happy. But anyway, you have to get in the best shape you can. If you're not in the best shape you can, you're not doing the best you can. Again, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. You know, you see how upset I am. I surround myself with beauty. In my office, I have over almost about 250 plants. And I water them all. I have artwork everywhere. One of my still great friends, Marie-Pierre Parisian, who was an artist, used to say to me, Gerald, art is the way of finding the true meaning of the human spirit. And it's so true. We need to bring that art. Look at the era of Art Deco. Look at the beauty that was created. Where I am up here in Kingston, we have these, again, more pre-Revolutionary War stone buildings than anywhere else. And it was a Dutch, so they have these buildings that have that Dutch look to it. Beautiful. Now what are they? All crap is steel and glass. Look at the cars. You can't tell the difference between one or another. They all look like little baby hearses, you know. When I was a kid, that's what they look like. You put the dead people in these. We lost the style. We got to bring it back.
There's something there about pride and the value of pride. You showed us the picture of your parents' wedding, and I think you said 1934. And although your father worked at a fish store, he dressed, a certain way. There was a level of, it's like, you call it pride, you call it self-care, self-respect. It's the same thing, right? But that's largely what's lacking when I think, what's the gap between today, the average, and becoming the best spiritually, emotionally, and physically, as you mentioned. And it comes back to, is it a self-respect thing? I mean, I tend to think it is. I'm like a bit of a meathead when I look in the mirror. It's really important to me that I see a weapon. Like, I'm never going to use the weapon. I got 3 kids. I'm a passive guy, but I need to see a weapon when I look in the mirror. I just need to know it's there. I just need to know it's there. Right. Mm-hmm. And then I leave it in the back pocket. I never take it out, but it's there, Yep. But it's a mental health thing. Which is directly tied to self-respect. And would you say that's kind of the missing link right now? Am I close? What's your take?
Yeah, no, it's it. It's again, but the people have been brainwashed. They're told to follow orders. Look on the again, I can't stand either of, I'm not voting for either of the clowns. Again, one of the covers of our Trends Journal magazine was Minnie Mouse versus Donald Duck, the Disney White House, the presidential reality show.
Right.
So, I'm sorry, your thought, I lost my train of thought. What you're saying?
Well, how do we bridge today's average with becoming the best spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically that you can be, right? Like that's and it's a lack of self-respect or a lack of pride.
Oh, going back to how they brainwash you.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the Biden administration. They were going to put this clown lady in there to be the misinformation czar. Remember that one?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Misinformation. You mean I won't swallow the crap that you're spewing out?
Yeah. Yeah. That was the Ministry of Truth.
Yes. I think, what is it? I call this the USSA, the United Soviet States of America.
Because we've had ministries of truth in the past, typically during world wars.
Yep.
They're propaganda machines and effective.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, look what they did World War One. Woodrow Wilson put these young guys, sent them to jail for reading the Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Independence when they didn't want to go to war. I mean, one after another. They never stop with this stuff. And again, who the hell does one person say, I'm in charge of this country and I'll tell you what to do? What are you kidding me? What are you kidding me?
But that right there, that is the American spirit right there, because the history of human beings is its leadership and governance and top-down authority. And I think what you're displaying right now, isn't that the American spirit? Who are you to tell me like that rage? That's traditional American rage, right? That's so important. And that's the only way.
As I say, that's exactly the way I feel.
Which is unique. It's a anomaly in the most of the course of human history. It's an anomaly event to have that kind of rebellion.
Every morning, by the way, I have all pictures up of my aunts and uncles and parents, grandparents. I grind espresso by hand because when you put beans in a blender, it burns them. It comes out nice and smooth when you grind it by hand. I put a little bit of anisette in there. And every day I thank them for everything that they gave me. They gave me love and the understanding you're on your own. You're going to make it on your own. You become the best that you could become. And fun-loving, caring, blessed as blessed can be. And I'm very thankful my daddy, unlike these little arrogant boys, that my daddy didn't leave me any money. He left me everything of who I am. So I'm glad I made it on my own because that's what they gave me to be. You're on your own. And you people up here, look at one of my tenants at I have three of the most historic buildings in America. The only place with pre-Revolutionary War stone buildings on each corner. The 1763 Dr. Jensen house. I used to rent it out to Warren Buffett's son, the Novo Foundation. Never a penny did he give us for our peace movement. Not a penny. Could you imagine if the billionaires gave which is chump change to put all the billionaires together, if they gave $1 billion to the peace movement? We'd have peace tomorrow. But they're just pieces of crap, only interested. But they're very much smarter than I am because when they die, they're going to build these huge caskets and take all that money with them.
Right. You hit on something there. You're on your own. And
you're on your own.
That mindset, I think, is scary to a lot of people because it means nobody's got your back. There's no safety net. And when you have to choose between that and a politician that says, no, I got your back. I'll take care of you. Like, right. And it's a trap, but it's one that people fall into. And I think the disconnect is understanding that you're on your own. Nobody's got your back is actually really empowering because it puts you in the driver's seat, right? You're the one in control, therefore. Yeah. But as soon as you want to delegate accountability and say, no, my life is this way because of so-and-so. This happened to me because of that. And you shed yourself of accountability and responsibility, then you're putting somebody else in the driver's seat. And that just perpetuates on itself until you're voting for governance because you don't want to be on your own. Yep. Right? You don't want to have accountability.
You said it. You said it perfectly. It's exactly the way it is.
So, maybe I'll run for office and I will mandate things like morning push-ups, spiritual practice. I'm not sure. Meditation.
Meditation, yeah.
Look, the initiatives that you're working on, I think, are the solution. It's leading by example. I got 3 kids. I know they will never do what I say. That's true. But they will always do what I do. That is also true, right? Yeah. And you can beat people over the head forever. They're not going to listen. They're not going to follow your instructions, but they will follow examples if those examples make sense. And I think that's what you're doing.
Again, when we have to break up the corporations again and put back the antitrust laws that they did away with, the Robertson-Patman Act, Sherman Antitrust Act, Clayton Antitrust Act, the Glass-Steagall Act, one after another, they did away with them. When I was a young guy, again, speaking about my aunts and uncles, they had butcher stores, fish stores, butcher shops, fish they all, independent, now it's all chains. Mm-hmm. There's no more hardware stores. There's no stationary stores. There's no more drug stores. There's no more shoe stores. They're all chains. Yeah, there are a few, but the chains own everything. Mm-hmm. And by the way, when on that immigration process, that's why they're letting them in. You go to any of these places like Lowe's, Marshalls, there's always help wanted, help wanted, help wanted. They're paying the people nothing. They bring it, they want cheap labor. And that's what you go in there and half the people can't speak English anymore.
Right.
They want cheap labor. That's all it's about. They own the country. The bigs own the country.
Which is kind of the natural evolution of free market capitalism, right? Because eventually it's like the game of Monopoly, it's a winner take all environment by design, right? And so it's tough to know when to step in and break up monopolies when what you're doing is sort of punishing success. And I agree, but it's tough to see an end result working out any other way, because if you put 10 competitors in an arena, eventually one's going to win. And then that person has the unfair advantage, but it was the result of competitiveness.
But again, it's, all the guys, as I said, three companies own 88% of the S&P 500.
Yeah.
It's a crime syndicate. The banksters own they're bandits. And, it breaks my heart, to see what's happened to this country. And,
walk me through Occupy Peace, Gerald. I'd love my viewers to know exactly what you're doing there.
Well, again, we're having a rally. You could go to occupypeace.com, and we're having Judge Napolitano, Scott Ritter, Max Blumenthal, Anya Parampil, Joe Laurie, and others. And our mission is we want to get enough people up here at the Four Corners of Freedom in Kingston, where the seeds of democracy was sown. So we close down the streets and we make the news, and we just keep this thing going. It's very simple. The only way you stop it is by not stopping. Look how the Berlin Wall came down. People went there and they didn't leave. More people came. They didn't leave. More people came and more people came and they didn't leave. Day after day, week after week after week, they didn't leave and more came until they outnumbered these little guys in their costumes to carry guns. The guns went down, the wall went down. You can't go and do it once and make it. Look what's going on in Israel. By the way, one of my sayings is, when all else fails, they take you to war. I just read to you what happened that's in History Today, with FDR seizing all Japanese assets in 1941, and the Dutch and the British cutting off 3/4 of their trade and 88% of their oil when they import 100%. What preceded that? What was going on back then? Oh, the Great Depression. What preceded the war on terror? Oh, the dot-com bust. Now let's go back to the Israel war. Again, we only write the facts. When Netanyahu got back into office at the end of, it was December 2022, we started writing, not using our language, but what the media was calling the extreme right-wing government of Israel. He went on to try to push through his Judicial Reform Act, which basically said, I'm going to be brought up on charges, but I'm going to pass this act that's not going to make that happen because the judges aren't going to have the power the politicians are. Facts. 39 weeks of protests were going on in Israel before Hamas attacked on October 7th of 2023. 39 weeks, not my language, the language from the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog. Again, before Hamas attacked, Israel is in a civil war. Hamas attacks, everybody forgot about that. When all else fails, they take you to war. Again, we only put the facts. Right after it happened, the news came out, the United States and Egypt had warned Israel that this was going to happen before it happened. But out of the news, gone. And then Haaretz, again, the Israeli newspaper, shows all the data showing that they were told this was going to happen. They let it happen because when although he was failing, they take you to war. And now they're ramping it up. Israel has been destroyed as an economy. And it's only going to get worse now that they've ramped it up against Hezbollah. And here's the other, by the way, again, why there's no journalism anymore. Pick up any Western media, read about what's going on in Lebanon, and all they call Hezbollah are, quote, militants. What do you mean militants? You mean the people, the Lebanese that fought Israel and threw them out in 2006 after they had invaded and were there for how many years? Oh, they're militants for throwing them out? Oh, and the people in the West Bank that resist getting more of their land stolen and being punished, they're terrorists. So if somebody breaks into my house and they got a gun and I shoot them, why, I'm the terrorist. This is illegal under the Geneva Convention and Article 242 of the United Nations, all this land being stolen in the name of settlements. And then you go, again, look at the data. I think it's like 80 or 60, 90 countries out of 196 call Hezbollah a terrorist or a militant organization. The rest of the world doesn't. It's only the West and its friends. But I mean, every paper, militant.
Yeah. No, and I get the two sides argument because I think the founding event of Hezbollah was the 1983 Beirut bombing. Yep. 1,200 pounds of explosives in a car, the biggest non-nuclear explosion to date at when it occurred. It's been bigger ones, again, in Beirut actually since. But so, and that's the nature of war. There's no good guys. There's just bad guys calling the other bad guys.
You got it.
And you paint this picture, well, your quote, when all else fails, they take you to war. And I was reflecting on our conversation, just looking at, the financial situation we find ourselves in the West and specifically in America, and the growing deficit, growing debt, growing asset bubbles that are going to exacerbate that, the money expansion that's going to be required and the inflation on the back of that, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Well, what we need is crazy growth coming from somewhere or something else, right? And we end up in this scenario where it's kind of like the facts are laid right out in front of you. When all else fails, they take you to war. Well, what's happening, right? And you can find this story in history many, many times. You can live through it right now and today. But there's this either people don't want to accept. And here's maybe the difference. You can see that and not believe it's true, or you can just decide you don't want to believe it's true, right? And those are different things, right? So I think to maybe see the forest for the trees, but just not accept it as reality because you don't want to. It's too scary, right?
Again, it's, when I was a kid, I just started learning stuff and I get upset, about what was going on. And my father would say to me, son, take it easy. People have little minds. It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men, said Samuel Adams.
One more time. Can you repeat that, Gerald? That Sam Adams quote? Could you repeat that Sam Adams quote?
It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. When the revolution happened, less than 5% of the Americans supported it. We have to unite that irate, tireless minority. And again, you have to do it in a peaceful way. But it's not, it's peaceful in the sense that, no, we're not going to get in a fight about this, but we're fighting for our freedom. There's no violence, but you're not going to tell me what to do. And if enough people do that, I'm telling you, it could change overnight. But again, we have to bring the spirit of the individuals up to make that happen. And so people, again, they have to get in the best shape they can in any way they can, physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
In a way, I think it's happening on the margins. I'm seeing more people. Yeah, right. There's positive signs.
Yep.
That people have just had enough of whatever it is they've had enough of, whether it's, cultural, political, whatever, they've had enough. And, people are starting to do push-ups.
Getting involved in these wars, and these little slime balls call you an isolationist. That's none of my business what's going on. This stuff has been going on for thousands of years. This is part of a speech of George Washington's farewell address. Now, unlike these little arrogant boys like the Clintons and the Bushes and the Obamas and the Bidens and the Trumps, this is a real man that fought.
Yeah, he was a general.
Yeah. It is our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliances with any portion of the foreign world. Observe good faith and justice toward all nations. Cultivate peace and harmony with all. The nation which indulges toward another an habitual hatred or an habitual fondness is in some degree a slave. It is a slave to its animosity or to its affection, either of which is sufficient to lead it astray from its duties and its interests. A passionate attachment of one nation for another produces a variety of evils. All right? And he goes on to say, this stuff's been going on. This is not our business. Our only business is protecting America. And that's the Occupy piece. Close, you got 900 bases overseas in about 80 countries, 90 countries. Close all the bases. Bring home the troops. Secure the homeland. You want to go to war? Let the people vote.
Right. Yeah.
And anybody that votes for war, you go to war. Go fight. Send your wife, send your kids, send your transgenders, go over there and fight or shut your mouth. And again, I grew up during the Vietnam War. Every day I'd wake up and they're going to get me. They're going to draft me. I did everything I could to beat the draft. Everything. And I want to make this 100% clear. As a young guy in my late teens and 20s, I was stupid enough to believe the crap that they were spewing out. I even voted for Richard Nixon. I didn't want to go to Vietnam because I didn't want to get my brains blown out. But I believed, and by the way, Biden got 5 draft affirmance. I think Trump got 4. So
draft
they both beat the
affirmance.
draft.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And Bill Clinton did too.
Yeah.
So I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I believed in it. They lie you into it.
Yeah. Look, Gerald, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's always very stimulating chatting with you, and I appreciate you taking the time today to come back on the show and walk into some like controversial topics. You know what's so funny is that people say they call you controversial. You must know this, right? Gerald Celente is pretty controversial, and it's like, but why exactly? Like, because he's preaching peace. He's preaching rationalism, and he's preaching realism, right? That's controversial.
Yep. If you go YouTube, put in Zizzy and Honey Boy, you can see 15 minutes of the movie. Okay. The movie opens up. I used to be on Oprah. I was on Oprah twice. I used to be on all the time on CNN, Good Morning America, the Today Show. I think Fox used to send up the trucks with the satellites and CBS. I was on everybody. when USA Today was a big newspaper, they used to put my top trends every year. And the one that came out in December of 2000 was headline in USA Today. 2001 won't be our year, Trendseer says. And I warned that a wave of anti-Americanism was sweeping the globe and Americans wouldn't be safe at home or abroad. So now 9/11 happens. Everybody has. How'd you know this is going to happen? I said, it's what America, look, Bill Clinton. I mean, listen to Madeleine Albright when she's on Leslie Stahl. And Leslie Stahl on 60 Minutes says, is the price of 500,000 Iraqi children dead under the age of 5 worth what Bill Clinton did to Iraq? And she said, yes, it is. Anyway, when I said the United States would lose the Afghan war and the Iraq war, I got blacklisted from the media. I went broke. With the building I'm in now, it used to be an old grocery store. I was one day away from losing it in 2007. I had gold. I borrowed money because I've been buying gold since 1978. And I borrowed $25,000. So it didn't go into foreclosure. And I got back in the media when I came out with the Panic of '08. But I was blacklisted for coming out against war. Again, you can see the movie. It's only 15 minutes. Again, Doris Roberts, who played my aunt, died 15 minutes into the movie. But it was all about me being blacklisted. I used to be, I was in the news all the time. Again, it was almost embarrassing. I was in USA Today like 3 or 4 times a week. They were quoting me in different sections. So I got totally blacklisted because I was for peace.
CC and Honey Boy on YouTube.
Zitzi.
Zitzi.
Z-I-Z-I.
Z-I-Z-I. Zitzi and Honey Boy. Okay. I'm going to check that out right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Gerald, look, I'll let you go, but Trends Journal, don't miss it. It's every week. It's a colossal effort, over 100 pages. I think last week's was like, 170, like 180?
Yeah.
Bonkers amount of output. OccupyPeace.com. Thank you for that. And I look forward to next time. It's so great having you on. I love chatting with you.
I love being on with you, and thank you for all you're doing. And again, anybody that could donate, please help us. I said if the billionaires gave us $1 billion, we'd have peace tomorrow. Mm-hmm. You can't do it without dough. And, I use my own to make it happen. And a number of people have been very generous, but we need a lot more to make this really happen.
Okay. You got it. OccupyPeace.com. I'll pop some links right beneath this piece of content. All right. Thanks, Gerald.
Thank you.